The courthouse hallway felt colder than usual as Marcus Reed walked in, holding the file that could change everything. He didn't look nervous, just focused, like a man counting each breath. Inside the courtroom, Judge Carrington leaned back in his chair, tapping his pen like he already knew what today's verdict would be. The moment Marcus stepped forward, the judge's eyes narrowed, and he whispered to the clerk, "Watch this one, people like him always slip." That one line made the room freeze, but Marcus didn't react. He simply placed his documents down and waited, calm but sharp. When the judge began listing charges that made no sense, the crowd shifted uncomfortably. Even Marcus raised a slow eyebrow, almost as if he expected this. Every accusation sounded louder than the last: theft, obstruction, tampering, words thrown like darts, without a single piece of real proof. Marcus didn't interrupt. He just kept flipping through his folder, page after page, until he reached a sealed envelope, the one he'd been saving. Judge Carrington smirked, thinking he had the upper hand. "Anything to say before I proceed?" he asked, voice dripping with confidence. Marcus looked up, his tone calm but cutting. "Just one thing, truth walks slow, but it always arrives." Someone in the back gasped as Marcus placed that sealed envelope gently on the table. The judge's smile twitched for the first time, as if a tiny crack had appeared in his perfect plan. No one knew what was inside, but the way the judge stared at it made the whole courtroom lean forward. Judge Carrington cleared his throat, pretending that envelope meant nothing, but his hand tightened around the pen until it almost snapped. Marcus watched quietly, like a man who knew a storm was coming but wasn't the one who'd get wet. The judge pushed the false charges harder now, speaking faster, almost stumbling over his own words. It felt less like justice and more like a man trying to outrun something chasing him. As the clerk handed Marcus a form to sign, she hesitated, her eyes fixed on that sealed envelope. Marcus noticed her unease and slid the envelope a little closer to the judge. "It's yours," he said softly, but his voice carried across the room. The judge froze. The shift was small, but everyone saw it. His shoulders stiffened, his jaw locked, his smile vanished completely. He didn't even move to pick it up. When he finally reached for it, his fingers trembled. The envelope wasn't thick, but something inside it terrified him more than the law he pretended to defend. Before opening it, he shot Marcus a look filled with quiet panic, the kind a man gets when he realizes he's been watched for a very long time. Marcus leaned back, relaxed, almost casual, like he had all day. The judge tried to act brave, but his voice cracked as he said, "This better not be some stunt." Marcus didn't blink. "Open it," he replied. "You'll want to see who's really on trial today." The courtroom erupted in whispers. Even the guards stepped closer, sensing the ground shifting beneath them. The moment the judge slipped his finger under the seal, the room went silent, the kind of silence where even breathing felt loud. He pulled out a single sheet of paper, glanced at it, and his face drained of color. His hand dropped to his lap, the page shaking between his fingers. Marcus didn't move, didn't smile, he just watched him with a calm patience that unnerved everyone. Judge Carrington swallowed hard. The document wasn't complicated. It wasn't long. It was a federal notice, signed, stamped, and crystal clear. The judge blinked twice, hoping he was reading it wrong, but the bold line at the top hit him again. Active federal surveillance, subject, Judge Harold Carrington. His throat tightened. He looked up, but Marcus's eyes didn't blink or flinch. They were steady, almost tired, like this moment had been waiting for months. The crowd leaned closer, confused, whispering louder now. The judge tried to form a sentence, but all he managed was a dry, broken laugh. Who gave you this?" he stammered. Marcus finally stood, slow and controlled, and stepped toward the bench. "You did," he answered. "Every lie, every case you twisted, you left fingerprints all over your own downfall." The judge's hand slammed the paper on the table as if that could change what it said. His voice cracked. "You can't be the one leading." He stopped mid-sentence, realizing he'd said too much. Realizing Marcus already knew. Realizing the room was watching the fall of a man who always thought he stood above everyone else. Marcus leaned in just slightly and whispered, "I wasn't here to defend myself, I was here to finish watching you." The judge flinched like he'd been struck, not by a fist, but by truth he couldn't run from. The judge's breath grew uneven as he stared at the paper, like each word on it pushed him further into a corner he'd built himself. He tried to regain control, raising his voice, but it came out shaky. This is manipulation. I won't let some." He stopped when he noticed two men in suits slip quietly into the back row. No badges shown, no words spoken, but the judge recognized their faces. His lips pressed into a thin line, and the confidence drained out of him like someone had pulled a plug. Marcus saw the shift instantly. He didn't push, he didn't brag, he just stepped back and let the silence expose everything. The judge's gavel hand trembled now, tapping the desk in uneven beats. The sound echoed through the courtroom like a warning he could no longer ignore. People turned in their seats, sensing something bigger unfolding, something that had been hidden in plain sight. The judge suddenly tried to rush the process, flipping through files, stacking papers, pretending he still had power. But then he noticed another sheet tucked behind the surveillance notice. He pulled it out with a confused frown, then froze again. It was a timeline, every false charge, every manipulated case, every time he'd taken a bribe and thought no one saw. Each date matched perfectly with federal monitoring logs. His voice broke. How long have you been?" Marcus didn't let him finish. "Long enough," he said calmly. "Long enough to watch you bury people who trusted this courtroom. Long enough to let you show who you really were." The judge looked around desperately, searching for support, but not a single person moved toward him. Even his own clerk stepped back as if she didn't want to be standing near a sinking ship. The room felt like it was tilting, like the judge was sliding toward an ending he never thought he'd face. The judge's eyes darted across the room, begging someone, anyone, to defend him, but the silence hit harder than any accusation. His voice shrank as he whispered, this can't be real." But it was, and everyone in that courtroom felt it. Marcus didn't move toward him, he didn't need to. His calm presence was louder than the judge's crumbling excuses. One of the men in suits finally stepped forward, not rushing, not aggressive, just steady. The judge immediately backed away in his chair, knocking over his water glass. It rolled across the bench and dripped onto the floor, each drop sounding like a countdown. The suited man spoke quietly, "Judge Carrington, you know why we're here." And just like that, the last bit of color disappeared from the judge's face. He grabbed the edge of the bench like holding onto wood could keep his world from collapsing. Papers scattered at his feet. His voice cracked, "You don't understand. I warned you people about men like him." He pointed at Marcus, but his hand was shaking too badly to make the gesture threatening. The courtroom watched, stunned, as the judge exposed his own fear with every word. Marcus finally took one step forward, not threatening, just firm. "You didn't warn them about men like me," he said softly. "You warned them about anyone you couldn't control." The words hit the judge so hard he sank back into his seat. He looked small now, like he'd aged 10 years in 5 minutes. Then the second suited man pulled a folder from his coat, set it on the judge's bench, and slid it across with slow, deliberate precision. "This is the rest," he said. The judge stared at it, but he couldn't bring himself to touch it. Marcus watched him tremble, and for the first time, there was no anger in his expression, just a quiet clarity, as if everything was finally reaching the point it was always meant to.